So do we need a mic, or can you guys hear us okay like this? You like the mic? Okay, all right. We'll use the mic. All right, so we've got Tim over from Scribble Live, as well as Ali. We just want to make a quick note. In the time that we've had our graphic design done till now, Ali's actually shifted over to Visually, which is a company that was recently acquired by Scribble Live. And also we've got Jennifer Franklin from League. So we'll just get started off. Can you guys give us a quick 30-second intro to what you guys do, how you ended up there, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, everyone. Tim Peters. I'm at Scribble Live. We're a content experience platform. I think we're the third fastest growing software company in Canada, and my title there is VP Americas. So I run sales and marketing for our North American market. I have about 50 sales, marketing, sales enablement, sales engineers that report to me, just to give you a sense of the size of the team that I have.
Hey guys, I'm Ali Rashad. I'm pretty much what Tim just said. I'm with Scribble Live 2 now. I have an interesting story. I originally started in enterprise sales, 10 years corporate, moved to New York City, ran a sales floor, built it ground up for 6 years, ended up back going into SME to build a sales team to about 175 sales reps, to then do it again in education and get that up to 100 sales reps, to now back to enterprise with Tim at Scribble Live, getting back to what I love. So it's been an interesting ride, and I've learned a lot, and there's been a lot of people I've interacted with along the way, so it's been a cool ride.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Franklin, and I'm at League, and League is a digital alternative to benefits. My team's focus is really on the preventative healthcare side. So we focus on not necessarily the benefits when you get sick, but really trying to help employees stay healthy. So I lead the enterprise sales team there. I have only been there 5 or 6 months now, and it's been crazy growth in the time that I have been there. And prior to that, I've been in various other technology companies. Achievers, I was in San Francisco with them for about 6 years and led their sales team as well. And prior to that, I've always been in the human resource technology space.
So can you share one fact that people might not know about you? I like the one you shared with me earlier, but if you want to share another one, that's fine too. That you're a computer programmer.
Oh, I started my career as a computer programmer. So that was my first foray into the work world, and quickly realized about 6 months in, I myself did not want to sit behind a computer for the rest of my life coding. But I knew I wanted to stay in technology, and so I got on the sales side pretty quickly.
What's yours?
So when I was in university, I decided after many minimum wage jobs that I just wasn't going to do it anymore. So a friend of mine, we came up with this idea to hold private events for grad students, because we noticed they had huge egos. So like, they don't have their own private events. So we went ahead and organized this thing and kicked it off, and it was ridiculous. These guys are spending money. We were just making money. And so he goes to me, because he ended up being an ER doctor, funny enough, but he says to me, he says, Ali, you're a sales guy. I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, just cold call for sponsor money. So I remember being 21 years old, sitting in my parents' basement, cold calling law firms and recruiting companies, and I cold called like all the alcohol companies. And my pitch was, look man, I don't have lawyers and doctors and all this stuff. I have the next best thing to it. I have the grad students. And before you do it, I closed deals. And I was making money off law firms, and I had Bacardi sponsoring, Moet Champagne. This was insane. It's fun. And at that point, I think at 21, I was like, you can just dial a phone number and this stuff happens? I was like, I'm in for life. And that was it.
It's going to be hard to trump that story, I think. My claim to fame was that I actually used to be Mark Wahlberg's personal trainer, believe it or not. So that was my first sales pitch. I was a personal trainer at Good Life Gym in like 1999, and he was here to do a movie or something. And my very first day I started, he walked into the gym, and that was my first deal I ever closed, was pitching him on personal training sessions. So that's got me hooked on sales from that first day.
Those are all pretty interesting. I don't think I can come up with anything that will even match any of those. So to move forward, can we chat about essentially, nobody actually ends up in enterprise sales at the start of their career. So can you guys talk about your journey and essentially how you guys ended up? I know you guys touched on it a little bit, but gonna delve deeper into that.
Sure, anyone want to go first?
I started in enterprise sales when I moved on from Ceridian, and I started with Taleo. And Taleo, even though it was a Canadian-founded company, I forget what, Recruitsoft or something like that when I first started, they didn't really have a presence in Canada, so I was their first enterprise rep at the time. And it was a great experience in terms of learning, but a really bad experience in terms of management. But I liked selling big deals. And so when the opportunity with Achievers, at the time it was I Love Rewards, came along, they had no idea what they were doing about anything. So it was kind of one of those situations where I went in, and I was really able to help them grow substantially, just based on the fact that I had years of experience from my Ceridian days. I had this great enterprise experience now from Taleo, selling SaaS, and then really coming into the I Love Rewards / Achievers world. There wasn't anyone else there, and so it really kind of allowed me to be able to define what the space should look like, and started working with all the different departments in the organization to really grow this company outside of what we were doing just here in Canada. So that's how I ended up in enterprise sales.
Sure, yeah. So I have a bit of a different path. I started in sales, as I mentioned, in personal training, eventually found my way into the technology world, but after about 8 years of sales, I actually moved into marketing, and from 2007 until about 2014, I was exclusively working in marketing and managing inside sales teams. So took a bit of a different path there, working with a few companies here in Toronto, one being IntelliResponse, which was the first enterprise chatbot company really in North America. And then as those worlds came more and more together, inside sales, marketing started to play a bigger role in enterprise sales process as well. I sort of merged those two worlds together. So, I'm looking forward to chatting more about that during this time and afterwards, of the world of marketing as well, and how marketing and sales, especially in enterprise, are colliding and coming closer together.
Yeah, to Tim's point, so I started at Marcus Evans, where we brokered introductions between like CEOs and CEOs. We charged a lot of money for it. So I wasn't like privy to the concept of what enterprise sales was, to what inside sales was, to anything else. My job was pick up the phone, get a CEO on the phone, pitch them on what you're doing, and get them to buy today. And that was 8 years of selling. So legitimately, we were trained to close CEOs within 48 hours for $50,000 to $100,000, and we thought that was normal. And meeting other people, and they're like, my sales cycle's a year. I'm like, what? 1 year? Like, I can't even keep a calendar longer than a week, right? So it was a really unique experience selling that way. There was no concept back then of BDR and AD and AE and all this stuff. It was like, hey man, do you know how to dial a phone? Yeah. All right, pick it up 200 times and close a lot of business. And I came from a really rough and tough world, and I got really good at it. And so we targeted money managers, hedge funds, all the big street, Goldman Sachs, everyone, down to major law firms, and we just went at it. So I guess I have a different take on things, and I just believe that you can, at any age, decide to be an enterprise salesperson once you understand what your goals are at every stage, and you take good mentorship and you just haul ass at it.
So from there, with being with scaling up from having the difference between CEOs or selling between different organizations there, basically what made you more effective as a sales rep, in terms of like, what do you think makes an enterprise sales rep better than, or what skills do you think an enterprise sales rep has versus like SMB or mid-market? Like, what does it take to kind of close the bigger deals?
Yeah, I think in my experience, it's getting away, at a high level anyway, it's getting away from that transactional approach, right? Working at Intelli Response, we had deals where the sales cycle would be over a year, right? And so you have to build that deep relationship. And if you want someone to pay you $1 million for something, you got to add a ton of value and really understand their business and where you can add that value. So I think getting out of the transactional mindset into that really, deep value add, spending the time to really get to know the business and the challenges they're facing, that's probably a big thing for me.
I'd agree with that. Like it moves very far away from transactions. It's very much a relationship sell. What I notice is you have to be able to speak more to their problems and you need to talk about your solution. And by showing a higher level of business acumen around real challenges, real obstacles, and how you plan to approach them, that's the quickest way to build rapport with anyone. Nobody wants to hear your new technology. No one wants to hear about this stuff. What they want to know is, do you understand my problems? How are you bringing it up? Are you challenging my thinking? Are you making me think differently about the way we're doing things today? And that just leads to instant rapport. People like you more, and then you're able to create a relationship there. They'll end up helping you get to the right people because they like your message. And before you know it, you're tiptoeing around and you're tying people together and you're in there for a presentation, and that's, I guess, where the real action happens. And that's my philosophy on it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. Patience, it's a long sales cycle, and so I've seen some people try to go from that more transactional, quick sales, quick wins, big celebration, and try to move into enterprise sales, and it's been hard. It's been a hard transition because you don't get those accolades, you don't get that, you're doing such a great job. And so it's the ability to be really patient, exactly to your point, Ali, it's not being single-threaded. It's really important to build those relationships at so many different levels, and then you have that support when you actually are in the end of the sales cycle, get the deal done.
I will add one thing. Enterprise sales is very different, but it's not better. And I talk to a lot of young people out there, and in their mind they're like, I want to be in enterprise sales one day. But you really need to think that one through. It isn't for everyone, and there's money in everything. So don't feel like it's your be-all, end-all. This is things you really need to think about during your 20s, because it does matter as you get older. And I'm very old.
If I can build on that as well, it's also very risky. Right? You might go a year betting on one big deal to make the money you want to make, to hit your number. If that deal goes south, you're screwed, right? So I really like Ali's point that one isn't better than the other, they're just different.
So I've heard other sales leaders when they talk about having those deals in the pipeline. It's not necessarily just about having that one big deal, but you can have that whale-sized deal and then a bunch of smaller fish in the pond. What are you guys' thoughts about that? Should you really focus on the big deals, or kind of have a mix of them in the pipeline?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. I think it depends on the company, right? There's philosophies where you need to stay focused on who your core market is, and that may be a certain size of company. But I've been at organizations where you want to have a bit of a portfolio of risk. So you might be working some of those larger term deals, but mixing that up with some that still might fit in your addressable market, but they could have a bit of a shorter sales cycle. So it might depend on the organization.
I think it's important to have small wins as you can in enterprise. You should never just go for whales. They're obviously the ones you want the most, they mean the most, but they're very distracting as well. Like you can lose half a day just daydreaming about it, or doing the calculations on your commission on it. So small wins are enormous. Plus, in the world today, the $1 million deal doesn't necessarily exist like it used to. People appreciate the land and expand type approach where it's prove it to me, let's do a small project, let's do a pilot. Everyone's trying to manage risk. So to go in for the $1 million deal actually can potentially take you out of the running for the opportunity to solve that specific problem. Again, it goes back to really coming up with a strategy beyond transactions as to how you're going to be dealing with X client, and then it's experience. making a lot of mistakes, saying and doing the wrong things. That's all part of the game.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to Tim's point. It depends on the organization. There's some organizations that you're going to go into, and they're going to just give you 10 accounts, and those are your 10 accounts, and you bet your whole year, your whole couple years on those accounts. So at League, I have my team focused on specific 25 accounts that they own, they know everything about, that they're in, and they're dependent on, and then our BDR team will help them build their pipeline. So that's how I get my team focused, but it really does depend on the organization.
So leading off that, so we all suffer from the imposter syndrome to an extent early in our careers. I've been guilty of this many times. So was there a moment in the event, or was there a moment or an event in your career that occurred to you that made you realize that you could be a great sales professional?
I get asked this all the time, especially being a woman and having women ask me the same question. When I joined I Love Rewards, they thought that I knew everything because I had sales experience and no one else did. And so I definitely had this imposter syndrome where, I knew what I was doing, but they were betting heavy on me. But I was going in and they were asking me to go in and sell these multi-million-dollar deals, and I was doing it. And so you kind of quickly got over that imposter syndrome and know your value and know that you can do it, and just keep proving yourself and put yourself in situations that are hard and not comfortable, and then you quickly kind of get over it. But there's still days that I certainly still have it.
I guess it's an ongoing battle in sales, right? When you're high, you're high. When you're low, you're like, I'm an imposter, right? This ain't working out. They're gonna figure this out sooner or later. I might as well just pack it up now, right? So, early in my career, absolutely, I was the worst salesperson in my entire company. It was terrible. I wouldn't have bought from me. I didn't even know what I was talking about. But I quickly realized that messaging matters and your poise matters. And it is good to compare yourself to others, not from the way they sound and the things they do, but on their work ethic. Because you figure, okay, if I just work twice as hard as everyone here, there's a better chance I'll be successful. And I found that was the quickest way to get past that kind of imposter feeling and everything else. And eventually everything started falling through, and I got smarter. And it's funny, in hindsight, it was 4 months of hell. But what's 4 months in the grand scheme? And I felt like an imposter, and then suddenly things started happening. And I would have to thank the work ethic, the focus on the pipeline, crashing and burning mentality. I wasn't afraid, and that's the fastest way to get past that kind of mental block.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't think it's over yet. I still do feel like an imposter time to time. You as you move up in your career to different levels, from manager to director, you might get that feeling again and again. And as you get more senior, you're going to be helicoptered in sometimes to different companies to completely transform or fix a shit show at a company. And you have people's jobs on the line, the overall success of a company. And so, I think a little bit of it is healthy, though, to want to be successful, to take on the next challenge. But for me, it doesn't necessarily go away. It's always maybe there, but you want to step up and prove yourself or prove that that's wrong.
So, Ali, leading off your last point about having those 4 months that were super difficult, and you basically had to crash and burn before you're successful. For Jen and Tim, were there ever moments that you felt like you couldn't hack it, and then there was an event or something happened where you actually felt that you could change the direction of a really bad course?
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of the times in roles, especially earlier on in my career, I wasn't very good, and I sort of followed Ali's approach. If you put your head down, you put the work into it, things finally start to click. And for me, I'm just a simple kid from Sudbury, right? Not a big technology background, but you can compete by putting in that hard work. And so there's definitely been times in my career where you start off, you're really struggling, but you put the time in, and things just naturally start to click.
Yeah, I think for me, it was really going back to my mentors and really getting that reinforcement again of, you've done this, you know what you're doing, you just keep moving forward, and then going back to the situation and addressing it head on. Because there have been situations where I didn't feel like I was getting anything moving forward. I wasn't getting the buy-in from my leadership. And so it was just reassessing and going back to the people who know the work that I've done and getting some really good advice and then being able to push forward. It doesn't always work out, but sometimes in the situation I'm thinking of, it was really great to be able to get that and then be able to go back and just have that extra confidence to know that what you're trying to do is the right thing.
We're live here, guys.
I'll add to this. And I only bring this up because, I love the sales community and I love seeing people's careers flourish through a night. And I can anticipate what you're going through because I've seen it so many times. Like I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of great people, some great leaders in this room who work with me as well. But just to put things into perspective, that things aren't as bad as you think. If you're at a startup that's just figuring things out or you're having a hard time or whatever the case may be. I lived in New York and for a year and the market crashed and my market was investment firms. So I had packed up my whole life and moved there and suddenly the dollar was worth less than Canadian and someone across the street at the Citibank building broke the window to commit suicide in front of our office and I literally felt like my life was over. I was like, how am I gonna make any money? And it was a disaster. Like imagine living there at this time. We had to change our strategy, we had to change our market. We were going after like healthcare, we were going into different markets. We had to avoid our sweet spot. And it was a really rough time. And funny enough, we just got together and figured it out. Within a year, we ended up doing more in sales that year than we had done the year prior. So there will be some times when you find yourself in a place and you're like, nothing's gonna work out. And if you spend the time to focus on yourself and find the positives and just, again, work hard, there's money in good times and bad times. And that was a really interesting time.
So what was the shift from individual contributor and from individual contributor to manager and what was the biggest change you guys had to make?
I was having this conversation with one of my friends just this past weekend. Do you want to go into management or not? And so we were kind of going through the pros and cons. Being an individual contributor, it's kind of like running your own business, right? You have your portfolio of accounts or you have a territory and you're really trying to get everything done, to hit your number and get the deals done. And there's some independence in that. You're kind of making your own schedule to a certain extent. You're running your business. And then when you go into management, all of a sudden you don't have that same kind of control. You're really trusting in what you're doing and trying to coach your team that they're going to do the things that you want them to do. And so for someone who has a bit of a type A personality, sometimes that was probably my biggest transition, was not controlling and not being involved in every sales cycle and trusting in what I was doing in terms of training and coaching was going to get them there, and hiring the right people. So for me, it was just, I guess, a little bit of independence versus that trust factor. You're doing the right things to get the people doing what they need to do, and that was a big difference and a big shift for me.
Do you guys ever see the movie Moneyball? Yeah, I assume so. You remember that part where Brad Pitt sits down with this young baseball player and tells him, you're not going to play catcher anymore, you're going to play first base? And the guy's like, I don't know how to play first base. He goes, man, it's easy. And then his partner decides that, no, it's extremely hard. I'm telling you, moving to management is very hard. It is people are going to tell you, oh no, you're going to do great, just go to management. It is really, really hard. And you can agree, right? It's like you spend all these years trying to become like this amazing salesperson, and then you take a role that's completely not the same job anymore. It's like moving into a completely different role, and then you think that you can transfer all these skills over, but that doesn't work. And then people don't say and do what you do when you would have done it, then it gets frustrating. And then you see a number that you own on the board, and you're taking pressure from your team, but now you're taking pressure from upper management, and you're like sandwiched in, and there's so much anxiety, and you're lose sleep and stuff, and then you just want to get back on the phones, which is actually the stupidest thing you could do, is say, hey, let me just get on the phones and help us hit our number, because that's not leadership. That's just desperation, going back to your old skills. So it is a very hard transition. And I think the problem with sales in general, and this isn't a new thing, I think it's been going on forever, is that salespeople always think that going into management is progress in their career, when in fact it isn't. It isn't progress. I know way more sales reps that make a lot more money than sales managers do. But we have this thing where it's like, if I don't get there, then I didn't succeed. This goes back to figuring out who you are and what you want to do. I have friends my age who've always been enterprise sales guys, and they don't want to manage people, and they do tremendously well. And so you again, speak to the next generation, it's this stuff kind of matters. And if you really do want to go into management, you better start reading and picking up books again. You better hit the reset on your education if you really want to be good at it. I've seen too many fail trying it because they just thought it was the thing they were supposed to do, and it just wasn't. Anyway.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of that, what Ali mentioned. It's really in summary, it's really the opposite of what that direct contributor role is, right? If you're wondering what it's like to be in management, flip everything on its head. From your daily numbers, you're now thinking about everyone else and the company as a whole. You're not thinking about not even your department anymore. You start to think of the company, not this month, but this year or the next couple of years. So the only thing I'd really add is that if you are thinking about it, where a lot of people fail as well, especially in startups, is that there's not the support or structure to coach or train or be there for new managers. So I definitely factor that in as well. If you are looking to make the leap, what does the organization have to help you be successful? Are there coaches? Is there that structure? Is there a management training program even? So just something else to consider if you are thinking about making the leap to management.
As part of that leap to management, hiring is a really big part of that, building a team. So what are some successes and failures in hiring that you've seen in hiring sales reps? And can you share a story, positive or negative, about a positive or negative story about hiring somebody?
This probably goes back to when I started becoming a manager, and I started interviewing. For some reason, when you're younger and you do stuff, you just think you're the best at it. When you get older, you're like, I don't know anything. When you're young, you're like, I know everything. So I started interviewing people, and I had to hire 2 people for my team, and it came down to these 2 girls, and one was extremely introverted. She was super shy, and she didn't talk much, and I kind of hired her because I kind of needed the hire. And then I had this other girl who was super outgoing, and she used to do ad sales, and she was super arrogant about it, and you could just feel that intensity. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to hire both of them, and they're going to be on my team, but I'm going to kind of favor this ad girl because she just seems like she's going to bring it. And the first lesson number 1, I guess, in management. The first girl, my superstar, she quit after 2 weeks because she said, this is too hard. And the quiet, super introverted girl ended up breaking like 3 sales records in her first 6 months. And I sat there, I'm scratching my head, and I'm like, I don't know anything about hiring at all. Like, is there a science to this? I think as I got older, I realized that the only way to hire effectively is to do what people call a top grade. I think that people who have a track record of being successful and moving up and doing more things in their careers will always tend to do that in their careers. And that's the best bet. So the inside scoop to you guys is keep moving up in your careers and keep doing awesome and keep progressing, because it matters to your next role. It will impact where you end up. So take every day serious. This might not be the job you think you'll have in 10 years, but if you want that job in 10 years, you better have a hell of an amazing story climbing the ranks at every level. And that comes back down to what you're willing to do for your own career.
For me, I think it also goes back to just, again, stage of company that we were talking about earlier. We at Achievers and at League, we are growing so quickly, and I hired one person when I was at Achievers that was very well established in their career, had amazing experience, amazing results, but within the first week responded to me that they were too old and too experienced to pick up the phone and call anyone. And I was like, oh, this is not good. So, you know, it's just really recognizing where obviously the right people, the top grade, we love top grading, and just, yeah, the stage of company. But I also love introverts as well. I'm an introvert myself, and it's just heads down, do the hard work, and that continuous success. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think just in terms of who and how to hire, a lot of, you know, there's a lot of implicit bias that we all have. We want maybe to work with people who are like us, and so I think having a process for your company, a standard hiring process, you can measure and learn and optimize your process. So, you know, whether that be a certain number of interviews or maybe there's a bit of a test involved, but having a set documented process and then a documented evaluation process, I think that will help to hire better and better folks, you know, as you put more people through the system that you create. So I think that's important as well.
All right, so what about the flip side, in promoting reps to managers? Any key lessons learned?
Yeah, you know, on my side, it's tough. Like, just to give a lay of the land, reps that want to get promoted to, say, if they're BDRs, want to get promoted to account executives, you're not only competing amongst your peers on that BDR team, but also folks from other organizations that can move across and parallel to your company. So it can be tough. You know, the folks, you know, at a minimum, the folks that do get that shot, in my experience, are people that have, you know, crushed their numbers or who have excelled in that role. It's hard to ask for that promotion or expect that promotion if you're not already absolutely crushing your current day job.
I think it's also just seeing those people who step up and take leadership naturally, or they show that they're coaching without having the title of manager. So that's where I typically see that there's people ready or able to move into those types of roles, that they take the initiative on their own. Then we'll start and put them on a plan on how they can get to the next level. But as we've been talking about, it's not for everyone. And when we're looking at, you know, BDR, managers of BDR, managers of AEs, managers of enterprise AEs, it's all different levels. It's, you know, are you managing to meetings booked? Are you managing to revenue brought in? There's a lot of different types of criteria that you're looking at, and every type of leader is going to be different. So for me, it's really, are you stepping up? Are you taking on a role that you don't necessarily have the title for? And then we can start working from there.
I mean, I've seen that, well, moving up the ranks into management, it's not a job you, especially internally, it's not a job you apply for, it's a job you take. You literally take it. In fact, you create it sometimes. Cool thing about being with a startup is this is your best shot to move up fast and get into these positions. Good luck going out to the big boys, right? They've got a lot of experience, it's very competitive. So, from one side, you need to take it and you need to be proactive with it. You need to, it's very rare you get young people saying, I want to help by doing this, this, and this. But yet when promotions come around, they expect them. You have to really go out and ask to do more. I know with BDRs, I know where you're coming from, because you guys, I've never met a BDR who wanted to be a BDR before. The only BDR I've ever met says, I want to be an AE. You know, this is just a quick stop on the bus stop, right? And trying to get somewhere else. And so you really need to stop dreaming about other things and just destroy what you're doing. Get so good at it that you could train other people to do it. You should be able to replace yourself as you move up. So that's my thing. But on the flip side of when it's failed, and that was, I think, part of your question, is that, again, I'll go back to the point where it's hard for us to not give our number one sales rep the manager job when they ask for it, when we're ready for it. The scary thing is the lesson they have to learn when they do it and they realize, man, this isn't what I thought it was. I thought I didn't know you guys actually did stuff. I just see you sitting at that desk and you just seem happy, and I thought I'd give it a shot. Like, you have no clue, pal. And then suddenly, like, can I just, like, not do this anymore? But then they get caught up and they're like, well, I can't demote myself, so now I have to leave. And that's 99% of the time what happens. You get there, you realize you're not ready, you don't want it, and then you're too embarrassed to do anything else, so you just pack it up and leave. So getting into management, I feel it's important to start educating yourself about what it is before you explore it. And you should be open with mentors. I mean, there's some great VPs in the city who would be more than happy. I know Jay's an awesome guy in the city for that. But like, there's a lot of great people who you can turn to for advice and be active. I'll give it to Rads. Rads knows everybody in the city. This guy literally knows everyone. You can introduce him to someone once. He knows their name. He knows their dog's name. He's good like that. But you know what? He markets himself and he takes it really serious. I think all of you could benefit from a few tips from this guy, because it puts you on the map and helps you as far as your career progression as well.
Thank you for that compliment. So we've talked about, I think all three of us earlier today or over the weekend, we talked about The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It's a book by Ben Horowitz talking about how he scaled up a company and took it public and overcame a lot of challenges along the way. But can you guys share any books or blog posts that you think the audience should take note of?
Yeah, this is an oldie but a goodie, but there's a book called The Effective Executive. It's from the 1960s. The key takeaway is that we can all work and look busy, but how do you work effectively? How do you get things done that are measurable? And so the idea of all of us can maybe only take on one or two, maybe three things and do them really well. And I found that's been a really important lesson for me. Not, you can be busy, you can work late, but what are you doing that's impacting the business? What's tangible? And how are you reporting on that? So I think picking a few key projects is like some of the folks that mentioned on the panel today. What are you volunteering for? What are you going above and beyond your regular day job with? And what's the impact of those projects versus just, if you're a BDR staying late and making a ton of extra calls, what's the impact of that on the business? Much different than, if you host an event and help recruit the next 10 BDRs to the team, right? That's have a huge impact on the company.
I'm always reading different things. The most recent ones I'm kind of into right now is, I'm sure none of you have heard of them before, but there's a book called Sales EQ and Fanatical Prospecting by Jeff Blount. I never heard of him before. I saw something about him on LinkedIn to someone who shared something, and I was like, okay, I'll buy him and I'll check him out. And I think what I really appreciate about this guy is he brings it back to reality for everyone. And I think in sales we get lost and we over-strategize and we overthink and we do this and we avoid the phone and we avoid this and we do that. And he's like, dude, you're not making money if you don't have an amazing pipeline. Let's start there. Then let's go here. And you know what you need to do? Pick up the phone for a couple hours and make something happen. Don't put it down until something happens. And he's like, he just went right back to the raw days. And I was like, man, and he wrote it recently. And I'm like, I guess we're all overcomplicating things these days. We have these huge tech stacks and a million different softwares are running. And at the end of the day, it's some of the most basic fundamentals that'll separate you from the pack. Your customers, your prospects don't know what your office looks like. They don't know what your softwares are running. They know nothing. You either exist or you don't exist. And if you exist and you're able to drive a hell of an amazing value prop and a challenging conversation that's interesting, suddenly they want to be your friend, they want to learn more, and it all starts right there. And so it's a refreshing little take on hitting the reset from all the crazy, more theoretical stuff that I've been reading lately.
There's a couple. So I'm a big fan of John Barrows. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably know. I just love, he's just to the point, and I was speaking with him, and I'm like, so it's so basic, really, what he goes through. And I'm like, why doesn't everyone do this? And he's like, well, that's it, and not everyone does it. And so I love his tips, his points, his blogs that he puts out. So big fan of John Barrows, but also Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In. So as a woman in sales and selling to a lot of women, it's really important for me to make sure that everyone has a voice in the room. So I'm a big proponent for that, big supporter of women in sales, women in business, and to the customer that we're selling to. So I'm in HR, a lot of my buyers are women, and so for me it's kind of getting in that mindset as well, even being a woman. So I recommend that to anyone men and women.
I'll share the last one, just to tie on Ali's note. There's a guy named Peter Kazanji. He founded a company that was eventually bought by Monster.com, but he had a blog post on First Round Capital, and basically it came down to this. Anytime you're not on the phone or you're not emailing, you have to ask yourself, why am I not emailing? Why am I not calling people? It just came down to that. It's a great post, but we'll include it on the resources note in the notes after. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We'd love to kind of switch it over to Q&A. Does anybody have any questions? We'll start over here and then we'll go over here. Yeah.
Should I get the mic or?
No, just speak and then repeat the question.
Use my monotone voice, okay. So for, actually this is a theme that everyone else spoke about, which is around providing value. So one of the books I'm reading now is Challenger Training. So it's around teaching, take control, and tailoring. So for, I guess the challenge for many of us, and I don't mean to speak on anyone's behalf, but we're very early on in our sales career. So like what is the process that a rep in our level, given for junior, mid-market, whatever that looks like, what is the process that we need to go through in order to provide value to you? So what are some of the things that we could teach you if we were in a discovery call with you being decision makers? If that question makes sense.
So yeah, I think if in case anybody heard that, the question was essentially with Challenger Sales and the book that came out in Challenger Customer in terms of like teach, tailor, and take control. How can people that are early on in their careers do that with senior executives?
Yeah, I'm in an interesting position because I also run marketing at Scribble Live, and so I've had to remove my phone from the wall because I get so many calls because I'm a buyer as well. And for me, what stands out though, if people are able to reach me, is deep, specific knowledge about my space, right? So not just high level, we reduce costs, fire off a few stats in a voicemail, but getting really specific that you've done your research on me, on my company, maybe what my competitors are doing. That tends to really stand out, and it takes time, it takes an investment, but the more you're at least some sort of industry expert, that will stand out to me, and I'd be willing to give that person much more time than someone who's reading from a really high level superficial call script.
To add to that, every company has a nemesis company, one or two that just keep always coming up in conversation. And if you're able to like relate success stories back from those companies, kind of piques everyone up. Like, what do you mean? What are they doing? Why are they doing this? Tell me more. But I think you need to learn how to be, first of all, I guess it's been coined your best friend voice. Stop being so rigid when you talk to people. It makes us uncomfortable. Be human, be yourself, and then beyond that, be direct. Like really be direct. I think SaaS in general is so vague. Even I have a hard time understanding what people are selling me half the time. I'm not even trying to be rude about it. I just don't understand. There's been so many solutions that our companies have bought that I got demoed on, and I remember months ago, and I didn't know that was what they did. So I'm like, why do we buy this thing? Because I got a demo and this guy was terrible. No, it's a great product. It does this. I'm like, I had no idea. So you need to like be very direct and speak to. An old friend of mine, an old VP, told me it's called speak to the process. Say what really is happening to people. Like, dude, your salespeople are doing this. This is never going to change because of this. And other companies like you are doing this now to fix it. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I guess you're right. How did you know? Right? So like the deeper you're able to get into my world, the more I want to hear your solution to the problem. Does that make sense? It takes a bit of confidence and practice and everything else, but believe me, you will really resonate with people. And 99% of salespeople don't even have the courage to do it. So you will stand out as the most memorable call of the day for this person. 100%. They will remember you. So just keep that in mind and take it a few steps further than you're comfortable and watch all the great things that happen.
I really wouldn't add anything else.
Thank you.
for somebody else. And then we've got 3 more, so 1, 2, 3, and then 4. All right, so go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so this is a two-part question. There's a lot of discussions around going after big whale deals versus having a bunch of small wins. And then there was also comments about being patient in those deals. What advice would you give for companies who are just starting up an enterprise team or launching a brand new product where it's kind of unproven on what an enterprise sales cycle looks like? So there's not enough data to support, length of sales cycle and so forth. What is the best way to manage a forecast around that, to align expectations with the organization of what's realistic in terms of being patient? And then my second question is, if you're hiring reps for those enterprise roles, what are the indicators when you know it's not working where you might need to make a personnel change there? Or how would you handle that?
Question.
So,
Repeat the
oh,
question.
okay, that was a long question.
Just
What's the best
summarize.
way to forecast if there's no proven enterprise cycle already in a new organization or a new product? How do you get the organization to back that? So I'm going through that right now at League.
It's been a year, no deal has been closed, but it looks like they're doing all the right things. But
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you look at standards across SaaS, and I'm just speaking to SaaS, I can't speak for other industries really, there is a somewhat of a standard between a 3 to 12 month sales cycle for those kind of deals, and for software sales in particular. And it's a matter of seeing the right progress in those deals. If you're defining the stages properly, so if you need to have the right sales process defined, and that you can do before having it proven out and really understanding, okay, you got to do this to get it to this next stage, to the next stage. And if you're seeing that specific progress and you're seeing that the deal is going to be getting to the next stage in a certain time frame, then you are seeing the right progress. But for me, it's a matter of what are the goals for the year? How do I back it up into how many reps and the quota coverage and everything that I have there? And then it does go back to that trust and patience and within the organization and saying, this is what I know, these are the right steps, this is the sales process that we have in place, this is the support, the budget that we have against it. But it really is a lot of trust from leadership and from the board that you have defined the sales cycle properly and that you're moving things along in the right way.
That was a great answer, by the way. I don't have much to add to that, but I think it really, how big is the deal size?
well, that's the question. They could go after $1 million deal.
They could.
They could. It really depends on the scope of the deal that they're going to go after.
I mean, maybe you define, it depends on the markets you go after, but maybe this would be better suited for mid-market and smaller deals to start with. That way you can see a faster transaction and build predictability in smaller volume, then start scaling the enterprise, which most companies do. Like, people don't know Salesforce started off only targeting really small companies and then figured out the cycles, created revenue, and now we only associate them with enterprise. But maybe you start with splitting sales reps between you target small, medium, you target this, and you target enterprise, and then you participate in some of these calls and figure out what's going on as well. And it's funny how your customers will just tell you the truth if you ask them for help on how to do this. Then it comes down to how you demo the product. Are they demonstrating the right value? What's the sales pitch sound like? Is it attacking their problem? And then you start looking at you look at mini stages, to her point, from like, how many of these convert to demos? How many of these convert to the right follow-ups? How many of those convert to tying in DMs? It's, for you to really figure this out, you have to get very granular at the beginning if you're at your stage. And it's not gonna be fun. You might be on a lot of these calls too, but I mean, that's the roll up the sleeve. I'm kind of going through that myself visually with a small team, and we're figuring out we've changed our value prop. The pricing has changed, everything's kind of going upside down, and for me, I'm just trying to I want to be a part of every conversation right now to figure out just how realistic this is and what our timelines look like and how fast this will turn. But that's just my 2 cents. And I think her answer is more on a strategic level, makes tremendous sense.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add is that, I'd be very wary about going right after those big enterprise deals. There's a lot of things, again, it's a bit of a playbook in the SaaS world anyways, of doing some things initially that don't necessarily scale. So who are the early adopter customers that are going to give you the case studies you need? Who are going to give you the folks that are going to speak in your press releases? They're going to be your customer advocates. So doing those things, you're going to start to see whether the product's actually going to provide value at that enterprise price point. You're going to get feedback on the product. So just jumping right to enterprise, it could be a bit of a fool's errand. Sometimes you do some things along the way that were mentioned. Or you go up to that pricing model. A lot of the times people will adjust pricing, 20% until you really start to get friction, right? Not just sort of closing your eyes and sort of trying to guess what the price point should be. So maybe doing some of those things ahead of time before pinning down that pricing could help, especially getting the case studies. Enterprise folks, generally those larger companies, very risk adverse, very wary, not the same as selling to smaller startups who think a product's cool and are gonna give it a shot. People are more, generally speaking, more risk adverse and want to see the case studies and see the ROI and stuff before making those big purchases.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that as well. At Tula, the company that I'm at right now, when I started, there was literally just 2 customers, and the combined revenue was not even the same amount as one deal now. And the third customer that we actually got, the organization sat down. It was like myself, one of the leaders, the sales leader, and then a few people on the executive team. We had to decide after going like a major retailer that has 1,000 stores, or we're going to go after this kind of niche marquee brand that's growing, but they're not anywhere near as large. And we decided to go after that because we knew that number one, we couldn't support the large guy. We were 20 people. And then number 2, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to get any case studies out of them. So to everybody else's point, that retailer that we decided to go after, they just did a webinar with us today. And so I think there might be a benefit in actually going after getting a few of those smaller customers and then scaling up from there and just increasing the prices, because that's what we've done at Tulip, and it's been pretty successful. And there was a second part of your question.
It's like, when are you going to fire these reps?
So basically, what trends do you look for in terms of how do you know when somebody's not going to be successful and decide to let them go?
So I said it a nice way.
You have to establish productivity metrics. If there's no deals yet, you can't hold them to a number, but you have to hold them to daily, weekly, monthly activity and KPIs, and you need to define what optimal looks like, and then build performance plans around that. So if they're not hitting those numbers, they're not going to help you get to where you need to go, but if they are, they're a valuable asset, and it may not make sense to let them go. It's more like behind the scenes, you guys need to figure out the strategy, but on the forefront, you let them do their thing.
I think there was 1, 2, 3, and then 4 and 5. Yeah. So, go ahead. Sorry, I don't know why I'm up here.
So my question is towards BDR specifically. What advice would you give in how to navigate an enterprise, a complicated enterprise organization versus a small company?
So the question was, for BDRs, how do you navigate a complex organization, 10,000 people plus in terms of getting a meeting or moving the deal forward?
Yeah, I think it starts, I know there's been some anti-technology and having the right sort of marketing stack stuff in place, but I think it starts by, having your sales force set up to track that activity, to track, it could be a long sales cycle, having the notes, mapping the account, knowing who the folks are who'd be involved in that buying process. So I think having those fundamentals down versus sort of notes on a piece of paper you keep on your desk is really important. I think you're just trying to triangulate around those folks. If you're selling into marketing, you want to get to know all of the folks that are on that marketing team. You want to be doing, the social selling aspect of things, trying to connect with people on LinkedIn. You want to be, trying to add value to those folks if there's relevant news. But I think it's, trying to map the account, I think at a high level is a good place to start.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think what's really helpful is building your own org charts for your own records and mapping hierarchies and who people report to. And the smarter you get within an organization, that's like huge. And then beyond that, as you talk to people, try to pick up on kind of cues around the culture and the way things are done there, and who the big influences are in the boardroom, because you always have your naysayers and everyone else. And I've always learned that if there's a notorious naysayer, he's the guy you need on the phone the most. Forget everyone else, because you need to win him over one-on-one for him to be like, all right, fine, you got me, I'm in, I'm interested now. And then you go after the easy guys, because then they're all just scared of him anyways. So there's like different tactics you'll pick up on, and that's been effective. But to Tim's point, I mean, I think with BDR, it is like account-based strategy. Also, ask your CEO, ask your VPs, ask them to check their LinkedIn to see who they know, because oftentimes that goes overlooked. Someone might know someone at a high level, and when we message people, we get quicker responses, and you might be able to use and leverage those relationships in the office to your advantage.
I don't know if you have the opportunity to work directly with your AE as well, and I find that the most successful BDRs that I've worked with really plan the strategy with the AE if they're one-on-one or 1-4 or whatever it looks like, and help get that guidance from their AE, and who do they want to be targeted, what's the messaging, what are they hearing from their buyers. So it's a great way for you to get closer to the AE, get closer to that team, and it allows you to get much more focused so that you can get the meetings booked.
And in terms of getting mapping out the accounts and getting like an org chart, there's a really good app on the Salesforce App Exchange. It's called Altify, so it can actually map out. You can see who the buyers are, and you can check off who you've talked to, who's like influential in the organization. It's a great one to check out.
What have you found effective?
Basically, my whole approach in terms of reaching out to executives, I used to do, the generic spam blasting stuff. I cringe when I say that now, but I used to. And I actually switched over just being really personable. It's not scalable. You have to figure out a happy medium in between it, but executives are just people. That's all it is. So when I reach out to people, I'm just like, oh, hey, congratulations on your new role, or saw that your company's doing this. Like, I always speak to their business. I know there's a lot of emails. My boss actually just sent me an email today. The subject line was just a girl asking for a meeting. And he just said, this is the worst prospecting email I've ever gotten in my life. And the thing is, it was generic. You could tell it was just generic and spam blasting, and it's not unique. And there's this whole, I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tirade here, but there's this whole idea of like those emails that are sent out with, like, are you being chased by a hippopotamus, or are you, stuck under a bus or something like that? Like, that stuff doesn't work anymore. Like, I don't know, every morning when I wake up on LinkedIn, at least once a week, you'll see somebody being called out on that. So it's all about just reaching out to the person and connecting them on a really relatable level. It's, talk about them, talk about their business. Yes, it's not scalable, but you'll eventually figure out a way to do it. Like, I have these like little reports on each account that I now can refer to, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure, Joe already left and now he's a CIO at another company, but I can still call somebody else up using the exact same information with the exact same script that I can cut and paste and still make it look like it's really tailored. So yeah, that's how I do it, and it's been pretty good. I get hugs from CIOs sometimes at conferences, so I've got to be doing something right. So yeah, that's a BDR's take.
I actually did get eaten by alligators, so reach out to me. We're getting towards the end of the time, so maybe we just like one more question.
Yeah, I think we had one, two. Yeah, I think you were the third person. So
I can speak loud. So the question's around scalability, actually. So my question for you guys is around what advice you give to account executives or BDRs in terms of scaling from like 50 to 100K deals to $1 million deals.
It's very client specific. If you want to play it safe, you go land and expand. You just get in there and do something with them. And these big enterprise clients, sure, everyone wants to do a deal, but it takes a long time. I don't think it's uncommon that it could take you 2 years to close an enterprise. Like, I'm talking Fortune 500 type client as well. I don't think you should be looking at it just from closing $1 million deals. I think you should be looking at it as how can I write $5 million in sales this year, and then work that number backwards, because I think you'd be just as happy, right? So there comes like a point where it's like, do I go into? I've seen a lot of businesses actually in SaaS companies who have changed policies internally where they're not allowing certain deal sizes to go through anymore, and it's really hurting the business. Because the competitors are willing to do it. And so when a competitor is willing to do a land and expand and let me prove it to you, but you're just going in for the $1 million, you might not even have a shot at the table. They might even axe you out before looking at their 1 or 2 finalists. But I know you closed some pretty big deals yourself, so maybe you can share.
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
So the question is, totally understand. The question is, right now I've started my business where I'm closing 10, 20K deals, then I'm closing 50K deals, then I'm getting the 100K deals, but I'm not getting to that larger land and expand type thing you were talking about. So I'm wondering, what advice would you give to someone that wants to get to that point where they're scaling quicker up to that $1 million? Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. I think it goes back to what we were talking about before too. It's like, and I think you're doing that right now. You're getting those customers who are willing to work with you. You can get those case studies. You can get traction under your feet. You can get all the infrastructure that you need in place in order to get the $1 million deals done. Because that's one of the things that I really experienced was we weren't able to sell multi-million-dollar deals until we had the right architecture in place with our technology. We couldn't get $1 million deals done until we had security checks done on everyone in the organization, right? So it takes time to get there, and so you do need some of those really good deals. The $100,000, $500,000 deals are great deals, and it will come in time once you have the infrastructure to support it.
Can I ask you a question? How involved were you in growing the relationship? Was it account managers to do that, or was that you?
Well, for me, I didn't manage the account after I sold it, so I would sell the deal, and it took a while. I would sell $100,000 deals, $500,000 deals, and then finally, once the infrastructure was in place, then I was able to sell the $1 million, the $10 million deals when we already had that infrastructure done.
Thank you.
Right, so that pretty much wraps it up. We'll have a networking after. Obviously, feel free to come up to the stage and connect with the executives. I think Mark wants to say one last thing.
One thing. That fell flat. Well, I'm the worst comedian in the world. 2 very quick things. I want to just give a shout out, first off, to all of our speakers who are super, super awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Raz, for moderating.